My name is Naomi Bailey. I'm 34 years old, and I want you to sit with this fact before anything else. I bought my house with my own money, at 28 years old, with a down payment I saved up working double shifts at a pharmaceutical distribution warehouse before I ever wore a blazer to work. Nobody gave me that house. I earned it. Keep that in your chest, because you're going to need it in about 6 chapters. Before we continue, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. Now let's continue. It was a Thursday night in April, a little after 8:40 p.m., and I was 2 days early from a business trip to Charlotte. The deal I'd flown out for, a distribution contract worth about $600,000 in annual volume, collapsed in a conference room when the client's CFO decided to go with a competitor. I was tired, disappointed, and driving my Camry down I-20 East toward Lithonia, Georgia, thinking about nothing but my bed at 2214 Persimmon Ridge Court. I saw the cars before I saw the house. Cars lined up on both sides of my quiet cul-de-sac. A Denali, 2 Chargers, a minivan I didn't recognize. Cars parked crooked in my grass like nobody cared whose lawn it was. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I could hear the music from the driveway. Frankie Beverly. Laughter. A grill going in my backyard that I hadn't bought. I stood on my own front porch like a stranger, keys shaking in my hand, and pushed the door open. 30 people. 30 people I mostly didn't recognize. In my living room, my dining room, spilling into my kitchen with plates of food I didn't cook, and above my fireplace, the fireplace I picked the tile for myself, somebody had strung up a homemade banner in gold cursive letters on white poster board. The mistake is finally gone. My mother was standing directly under it, laughing, a glass of Moscato in her hand, mid-sentence to a woman I'd never met in my life. My father was at the grill outside through the sliding door, flipping ribs like it was a family reunion. The room didn't go quiet right away. It took almost 10 full seconds. 10 seconds where I stood in my own doorway, invisible, listening to strangers celebrate something with my mother's laughter as the soundtrack, before someone near the door turned, saw me, and froze. Then my mother turned around, and her face did something I will never forget for the rest of my life. You need to understand something about my family before I tell you what happened next, because if I don't, you won't believe how calm I actually stayed. My parents, Walter and Patricia Bailey, had my older brother Jason first. Jason came exactly when they wanted him, planned, celebrated, named after our grandfather. I came 14 months later, unplanned, during a year my mother has told me more than once wasn't good timing. I grew up hearing that phrase in different forms my whole life. Not cruel, dramatic scenes, just small, constant erosion. Jason was supposed to be an only child, my Aunt Deborah told me once at a cookout, half joking, the way grown-ups say true things and call it a joke so it doesn't count. Y'all's mama used to say Naomi came and messed up the plan. I laughed it off too. That's what you do. You laugh off the thing that's actually breaking something in you, because the alternative is admitting your own mother has a favorite and it isn't you. Jason got the car at 16. I got a bus pass and a part-time job at Winn-Dixie. Jason got bailed out of 2 fender benders and a DUI without so much as a raised eyebrow from Daddy. When I got a B- in 11th grade chemistry, my father sat me down for 45 minutes about wasting opportunities. The nickname started as a joke, or that's what they'd say if you ask them. When I was maybe 9, at a family barbecue, my father had a beer in his hand and told my Uncle Cortez, loud enough for half the yard to hear, "This one right here was the mistake. Wasn't trying to have another baby, but here she is." Everybody laughed. I laughed too, because I was 9 and didn't know yet that some things you laugh at are actually the moment your foundation cracks. They kept calling me that, not always to my face. Sometimes behind my back, sometimes as an affectionate joke at Thanksgiving. Where's the mistake at? Tell the mistake dinner's ready. I built an entire adult personality around proving I wasn't one. The promotions, the master's degree I paid for myself, the house. So when I saw that banner, some ice-cold part of me that had been waiting my whole life finally understood exactly what my family thought of me. They weren't joking anymore. Naomi? My mother's wine glass nearly slipped out of her hand. Baby, you weren't supposed to be back until Saturday. The room had gone dead quiet. 30 strangers stared at me like I was the intruder in my own home, and honestly, in that moment, I felt like one. Mama, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. What is this? My father came in from the patio, tongs still in his hand, dripping barbecue sauce onto my hardwood floor. He didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. You're supposed to be in Denver by now, he said, like I was the one who'd made a mistake by standing in my own living room. Denver? I repeated the word like it was foreign. That's when a woman I didn't know, mid-50s, church lady dress, gold cross necklace, stepped forward and put her hand on my mother's arm protectively, like I was the threat. Pat told us you got a big promotion out there, regional director or something. Said you were so excited you just wanted your parents to have the house since you wouldn't be needing it no more. I stood there and let that sentence land in pieces because it didn't make sense as a whole. I have never applied for a job in Denver in my life, I said. My mother's face did something complicated, guilt trying to disguise itself as confusion. Jason said, she started, then stopped herself. Jason said. I turned and found my brother standing by the fireplace, under his own banner, holding a red Solo cup, not laughing anymore. Jason, 37 years old, in a fresh fade and a watch I was pretty sure he couldn't afford on a car salesman's commission, looked at me the way you look at a fire alarm you were hoping wouldn't go off before you got out of the building. Jason, I said, what exactly did you tell everybody? He set the cup down on my end table. No coaster, of course, and for the first time in this entire nightmare, my brother, the golden child, the one who never had to explain himself to anybody in this family, actually looked scared. Sim, he said, let's talk outside. And that's when I knew. Whatever this was, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan, and I had walked in 2 days too early to let it finish. Before I go further, you need to know what this house actually meant, because to my family that night, it was apparently just an asset to redistribute. To me, it was my grandmother's name still living somewhere in the walls. My grandmother, Eula Mae Bailey, raised 6 children in a shotgun house in Riverdale on a domestic worker's salary and never owned a home of her own her entire life. When she passed in 2018, she left me $22,000, not Jason, me, with a note in her Bible that said, "Buy yourself some ground, baby." Nobody can ever tell you to leave it. I cried, reading that note in a Wells Fargo parking lot. Jason was furious he didn't get anything close to that amount. He got her old Buick and $4,000, which he ran through in about 5 months on rims, and a bad investment in his boy's streetwear brand. I took my $22,000, added it to 3 years of savings from my warehouse job and then my pharmaceutical sales job, and put down $48,500 on a $242,000 house in Lithonia. I signed my name, mine alone, on that mortgage. I refinished the hardwood floors myself over 2 exhausting weekends. I picked the exact shade of sage green for the kitchen because it reminded me of Grandma Eula's garden. My parents came to the housewarming in 2020. My mother cried, said she was proud. My father walked through every room, nodding, and at the end said, "This is real nice, Naomi." Real nice. It was, I thought at the time, the closest thing to approval I'd ever gotten from him. I didn't know then that approval and entitlement can look identical on a man's face if you're desperate enough to see one and not the other. Over the next 4 years, my parents started treating my house less like my house and more like a family asset in waiting. My mother would say things like, "When we get older, this would be a good house for us to move into. It's got that downstairs bedroom." My father started referring to it as the family house at Sunday dinners, in front of other relatives, like I hadn't spent 5 years of my adult life paying a mortgage nobody else's name was on. I used to correct them, gently, at first. "It's my house, Daddy." He'd wave me off, you know what I mean. I stopped correcting them eventually. I thought staying quiet was keeping the peace. Standing in my living room under that banner, I finally understood. My silence hadn't kept the peace. It had funded a plan. Jason led me out to my own backyard, past the grill my father was still awkwardly hovering near, past cousins and strangers pretending not to listen. The Georgia night air was heavy and warm, cicadas going off in the trees, and for a second the ordinary sound of it almost made the whole evening feel like a bad dream I could wake up from. "Sim, it's not that deep," Jason started. "Mama and Daddy just wanted somewhere nice for their retirement, and I figured—" "You figured what, Jason?" He wouldn't look at me directly. That's when the real story started leaking out of him in pieces, the way guilty people talk when they've been caught before they finished covering their tracks. 2 years ago, when I had my gallbladder surgery, I signed a temporary medical power of attorney so Jason could handle a few bills and communicate with my insurance while I recovered. It was supposed to expire after 60 days. I never thought about that document again. Jason never let it expire. He kept a copy. And 8 weeks ago, drowning in almost $38,500 in debt from 3 maxed-out credit cards and a payday loan company called Sunrise Advance that had been calling him at work, my brother used that old power of attorney, along with a signature he traced off an old birthday card I'd given our mother, to draft a quitclaim deed transferring my house into our parents' names. "It's not final," he said quickly. Hands up like that made it better. "It's filed at the courthouse, recordings pending, but it ain't final yet. Sim, I swear, we were gonna tell you." "You filed it?" My voice cracked on the word filed. "At the courthouse? Jason, that's not a family favor. That's fraud." "It's not fraud if it's family," he snapped. And for the first time that night, I heard real panic under his anger. "I was gonna pay you back. Once the dealership bonus hit in June, I just needed the equity as collateral for a loan to cover what I owe before Rico's people." He stopped himself. But I'd heard enough. My brother didn't just want money. He owed money to dangerous people, and he'd used my grandmother's gift, my sweat, my name on a mortgage, as collateral to bail himself out, with our parents' full blessing, throwing a party to celebrate it before the ink was even fully dry. "And the banner?" I asked, voice shaking now, not from fear, from something colder. Jason finally looked at me. "Mama's idea. She said it'd feel like closure. Like finally we could stop waiting on you to figure your life out and actually be a family." I stood in my own backyard, under a sky I paid a mortgage to see every night, and understood completely, for the first time in 34 years, exactly where I stood with the people who made me. I walked back inside. The party hadn't stopped. Some of the 30 strangers were still eating, still laughing, oblivious that the mistake they'd been toasting to was standing right there listening to her own family confess to felony fraud in the backyard. My mother was waiting by the fireplace, under her own banner, arms crossed now, like I had wronged her. "Naomi, don't make a scene," she said, before I'd said a single word. "These are our friends from church." "Mama," I said, "there is a legal document at the DeKalb County Courthouse right now trying to take my house out from under me. And you're worried about a scene?" "We were going to explain it to you properly," she said. "You always overreact. This is family business." And there it is, that sentence, "You always overreact." 34 years of being told my hurt was an inconvenience, condensed into 6 words, delivered under a banner celebrating my erasure. "You called me a mistake my whole childhood," I said, and my voice didn't shake this time. "I laughed it off because I was a kid and I didn't know better. But you are a grown woman standing under a sign that says I'm finally gone, throwing a party in a house I bought with my own money, because my brother forged my signature to bail himself out of a gambling debt. Tell me, Mama, which part of that is me overreacting?" Somebody near the punch bowl gasped. My father finally stepped inside from the patio, sauce-stained apron and all, and instead of an apology, he said the thing that broke whatever thin thread of hope I still had left. "You've always had more than your brother," he said. "House, degree, good job. It wouldn't have killed you to help your family instead of making everybody feel small about it." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was the most honest sentence either of my parents had said to me in years, and it told me everything. "I built everything I have," I said quietly, "from nothing you gave me. And you have the nerve to stand in the house I built and tell me I owe you for it." I looked around at 30 strangers holding paper plates in my dining room, at a banner that would have made my grandmother turn over in her grave, and I made a decision that would change everything. "Everybody needs to leave my house," I said, "right now." Nobody moved. My mother actually laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. "Naomi, don't embarrass yourself." That's when I did the smartest thing I did all night. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anybody's plate. I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would actually help me instead of judging me, my college roommate from Spelman, Bridget Owens, who'd been a real estate attorney in Atlanta for almost 9 years. "Bridge," I said, walking into my own bathroom and locking the door behind me for privacy, hands finally shaking now that no one could see them. "I need you. It's an emergency." I explained everything in under 2 minutes. The power of attorney, the quitclaim deed, the pending recording at the courthouse. Bridget went quiet in a way that told me this was worse than even I understood. "Naomi, listen to me carefully," she said. "If that deed hasn't fully recorded yet, we might be able to stop it before it's finalized. But you need to act tonight. First thing tomorrow, we file an emergency objection and a police report for forgery, because that expired power of attorney does not cover what he did. That's identity theft on top of fraud. Do you have the original medical POA document?" "Somewhere, yes." "Good. Do not sign anything else tonight. Do not agree to any family meeting to talk it out quietly. That's exactly what they'll want, to smooth it over before Monday so the recording finalizes clean. You call me the second everyone's out of that house." I hung up, and for the first time all night, I felt something other than heartbreak. I felt ground under my feet. When I came out of the bathroom, my mother was standing right there, arms crossed, waiting like she'd been listening at the door. "Who was that?" she demanded. "My attorney," I said, and watched her face change color in real time. "Your attorney? Naomi, we are your parents. You're calling lawyers on your own family now? You forged a deed and threw a party about it under a banner calling me a mistake," I said, stepping past her back into my living room, where 30 faces were now watching this unfold, like reality television. "I think we're a little past family business, Mama." I stood in the middle of my own living room and, for the first time in my life, I stopped performing calm for other people's comfort. "For anyone who doesn't already know," I said loudly to the room, "my name is Naomi Bailey. This is my house. I bought it in 2020 with money my grandmother left me and 5 years of my own savings. My name is the only name on that mortgage." Murmurs rippled through the strangers still clutching paper plates. 2 months ago, my brother Jason used an expired medical power of attorney and a forged signature to file a quitclaim deed, transferring this house to our parents, because he owes almost $40,000 to people he's apparently very afraid of. My mother helped him plan a party to celebrate it, under a banner calling me a mistake, before I even knew it happened. The church lady woman from earlier set her plate down slowly on my coffee table, face flushing with second-hand embarrassment. A man near the door, I'd learn later he was a deacon from my parents' church, muttered, "Lord have mercy, Pat. Is that true?" My mother's mouth opened and closed. My father wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. "Naomi," my mother finally said, voice pleading now, all the earlier bravado gone. "Please, not in front of everybody. We can fix this quietly. Jason will fix it. Won't you, Jason?" Jason, standing near the banner he'd helped hang, said nothing. His silence was its own answer. "You had 30 people in my house," I said, ready to celebrate my family taking everything I worked for. Nobody in this room thought to ask me a single question first. Not one of you thought that was strange. I looked directly at the deacon. Didn't anybody wonder why the daughter wasn't even here for her own going-away party? Nobody answered, because they hadn't wondered, because it was easier to eat the ribs and believe the story they were told. "I need everyone to leave," I said again, calmer now, colder. Not because I'm being dramatic, because there's an active police report being filed tomorrow morning, and I would strongly suggest none of you want your name in the middle of a forgery investigation over barbecue. That got them moving. 30 strangers cleared out of my house in under 12 minutes, mumbling apologies to nobody in particular, leaving paper plates and half-drunk cups of Moscato behind like evidence of a crime scene. My parents and Jason stayed, and that conversation was the ugliest one of the night. By the time the last guest's taillights disappeared down Persimmon Ridge Court, it was just the four of us standing in a living room that suddenly felt much too quiet. "You didn't have to humiliate us like that," my father said. "You didn't have to steal my house like that," I answered, "but here we are." The following morning, I did exactly what Bridget told me. We filed an emergency objection with the DeKalb County Clerk of Superior Court to halt the recording of the quitclaim deed before it finalized. Because the medical power of attorney had legally expired 2 years earlier, and because Bridget's investigator quickly confirmed the notary stamp on the deed belonged to a notary public who had no record of ever notarizing that document, the deed was frozen pending investigation within 4 business days. I also filed a police report for forgery and identity theft. I want to be clear about something, because I know some of you watching this will ask, yes, it was my own brother. Yes, it was hard. And yes, I still did it. Because $40,000 of gambling debt and a forged signature don't stop being crimes just because you share a mother. Jason was charged with forgery in the 2nd degree and identity fraud under Georgia law. He avoided prison time through a plea deal, probation, restitution, mandatory financial counseling, but the arrest record and the shame of it moving through our extended family and his own social circle followed him in a way money never could erase. His wife, Tasha, left him 3 months later, taking their 2 kids to her mother's house in Stone Mountain. I heard through my Aunt Deborah that the marriage had been unraveling over his debts for over a year before any of this happened. The banner, apparently, was the final straw for her too. She told my aunt she couldn't stay married to a man who'd let his mother throw a party over stealing from his own sister. My parents were never criminally charged. Bridget explained that prosecutors typically go after whoever executed the forgery directly, but the deacon from their church, the same man who'd asked, "Is that true?" in my living room, apparently repeated the story to enough people that my mother stopped attending Sunday service there altogether. Word travels fast in a tight-knit Atlanta church community, and my mother, for the first time in her adult life, discovered what it felt like to be whispered about. They called me for weeks afterward. I let most of it go to voicemail. It's been 8 months since that Thursday night. My house is still my house. Deed clean, locks changed, alarm system installed the week after. Because trust, once it's been forged like a signature, doesn't come back easily. I talk to my parents maybe once a month now. Short, careful conversations, that never mention the party, the banner, or the deed. My mother has never once said the word sorry to me directly. She's said, "I hope you can move past this," which isn't the same thing, and I've stopped waiting for the difference to matter. My father hasn't called at all. I've made peace, mostly, with the fact that peace and closeness aren't the same thing either. I redecorated the living room, took down nothing dramatic, just repainted the wall where that banner used to hang, a warm terracotta color I picked myself, no committee, no permission needed. Grandma Eula's old church fan sits on my mantel now, right where the banner used to be, and some nights I sit with a cup of tea and just look at it and think about a note in a Bible that said nobody can ever tell you to leave it. I built a new circle, slowly. Bridget, my neighbor, Ms. Odell, who came over with a peach cobbler the week after everything happened and just sat with me while I cried. No advice, no judgment, just company. My cousin Angela, who works as a title paralegal and now double-checks every legal document that comes anywhere near my name out of habit and love. I'm not bitter. I want to be honest about that, because bitterness was tempting for a while, and I understand anyone who'd choose it. But I watched what carrying other people's guilt and shame did to 34 years of my life, and I decided I wasn't interested in trading one weight for another. If you've ever been the difficult one in your family for simply expecting to be treated fairly, if you've ever had your boundaries called an overreaction, or your success treated like a debt you owe people who never invested in you, I hope this story told you something you needed to hear. You are allowed to protect what you built. You are allowed to walk away from people who only valued you for what they could take. And you are never, ever a mistake. Thanks for staying with me until the very end. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. How do you think it all ended? See you in the next one.